Goldie, I wanted to ask you, what can be the consequences of this, if the regime does fall? What would be the consequences, first of all, to the people of Iran?
Well, freedom. We would finally have freedom after 47 years. We would finally be free from these savage Islamic terrorists who have been occupying us for the last 47 years. We can finally have a normal country based on the principles of democracy and secularism, like we were prior to 1979. The other thing as well is that we can finally stop being a sponsor of terror or being occupied by a sponsor of terrorism, right? Because prior to 1979, Iran and Israel were allies. And so we're actually looking forward to rekindling that allyship. That's actually one of our top priorities in the transitional plan for when the regime falls, is to reestablish and normalize relationships with Israel.
Goldie, could you double click on that? I know you were born in Iran. What are some of the misconceptions people have about Iran before 1979 or before the revolution?
So some of the misconceptions people have is that it was an authoritarian dictatorship and like people weren't free, and they like to say bad things about our beloved Shah of Iran, but the reality is those are all lies that have been propagated by the Islamists and the communists in order to justify overthrowing Iran and taking over in 1979, very similar to the propaganda and lies that they put out about Israel. It's the exact same thing. So the communists and Islamists like to paint themselves as the freedom fighters. Meanwhile, of course, we know that these freedom fighters are in fact terrorists. So I would say that that's a big common misconception. Another common misconception is that Iranians are Muslim. We're not. Prior to 1979, perhaps, some people just kind of identified as secular Muslim, but the reality is that today, less than 20% of Iranians identify as Muslim, and this revolution, it's not just about overthrowing the Islamic dictatorship. It's about getting rid of Islam and throwing it out of our country, basically, because we're Iranian, we're not Arab. We have a completely different culture, a completely different civilization. Just like the Jewish civilization, we're indigenous to the land of Iran, and the history of Jews and Iranians goes back thousands of years before Islam was invented.
Yeah, Goldie, one of the things that seems about this revolution is that people are rallying around Reza Pahlavi. It seems like in the past, some of the opposition groups have been disorganized or not unified. Is this marks this revolution that people are rallying around Pahlavi to come back and at least be a temporary leader in a transition?
Yes, absolutely. So I think that's one of the defining features and defining factors of this revolution is that everyone has rallied around His Royal Highness Reza Pahlavi, the Crown Prince of Iran. He is the only one that we trust to transition Iran from a totalitarian Islamic dictatorship to a functioning secular democracy. And, people in Iran are only chanting his name, Reza Pahlavi. They're sharing photos where they're holding up images of his face on camera so that people outside can see who they're fighting for. And young people in Iran are saying, we are willing to risk our lives if it means we can return our king back to Iran.
On a personal note, Goldie, if I may, how are you feeling watching what's coming out of your home country and what's being done right now, the abuse of your people? How are you feeling?
It's difficult. It's difficult because we know how brutal the regime is and how brutal it has been. But Iranians, we're very brave. We're very strong. We have, we're an ancient civilization that has survived for thousands of years. And so as difficult as it is, seeing the bravery of Iranians in occupied Iran and how they're just, willing to give up everything for freedom, that gives me energy. But more than that, we have received so much love and support from people around the world, people in Israel, people in the United States, people across Europe, South America, like everywhere that I can think of, there are people who are tuning into my live stream, sharing their love, sharing their support, rooting on for the Iranian people. And that gives me a lot of hope, and it's giving all Iranians hope, because now we know that unlike previous times, we're not alone anymore. We're not alone. The whole world is behind us, and the whole world is cheering for us to as we overthrow one of the most evil dictatorships to have ever been created.